You can see by the look on my face how thrilled I am that Dr. Mark Wrighton said yes, he would come here to Mason Pointe to speak with us today. It's truly an honor. Chancellor Emeritus Wrighton came to St. Louis a number of years ago, and I think he will probably fill us in on his background as he talks to us about Washington University. Dan and I were privileged quite a few years ago to meet Dr. Wrighton and Mrs. Wrighton, and we decided it was before she was Mrs. Wrighton. Am I correct on that? Seated at a table that I think was a fundraising event, and I remembered him as being charming, and Mrs. Wrighton, and this is reaffirmed today. So I'm not going to say anything else, but I put it all to you with sincere thanks for coming.
Great to see all of you, and I'm going to document my presence by taking a photo of you. My wife will be very interested to understand the great crowd that came out to hear me speak. And because I just mentioned my wife, that's a very interesting part of my history here in St. Louis. I was divorced for a couple of years before I arrived here, so I joined Washington University as chancellor as a single person. And I asked my predecessor, Bill Danforth, do you think it would be possible for me to, would you think it would be possible for me to come as a single person? And I don't know among you if you knew Bill Danforth, but he gazed and looked at me and said, it will be harder. Because his wife, Elizabeth Ivy, was a great first lady. And I soon realized just how important the first lady would be. I came as a single person, and of course, following Bill Danforth was kind of intimidating. He had served as chancellor for 24 years. He was a medical doctor. I'm just, a doctor, but not the kind that can help you. So I took Bill's comment to heart. And when I came, there was quite a bit of mail. Unlike today, people used to send letters. And I had a letter on my desk from a person that I didn't know, just welcoming me to the neighborhood, because I would be living right at the university, at the chancellor's residence on Forsyth. And this person wrote to me and said she'd like to get together and show me around the neighborhood. So I was thinking to myself, this is an odd letter, and it turned out to be a woman, and I called her. The number was in the letter, and I left a message. I said, this is Mark Wrighton. I'm following up on the letter that you sent to me about possibly learning about the neighborhood, and I didn't know that it was her business phone number. And anyway, she then had the onerous task of calling me to return the call. And when she called, she said I was like ice. And because I was thinking she was going to try to sell me insurance or something else. Because as a newcomer, had many people offering services to me, including banking and other things. Anyway, she said she just wanted to meet me, and I said, what interest do you have in the university? And she said, I have no interest in the university. I just want to meet you. And so I said, splendid. And we had lunch 2 weeks later. We developed a committed relationship and married 5 years later. And so we had a very good time. Being single in coming to a university like Washington University was in fact kind of intimidating. I didn't have anyone to debrief and talk with about everything that I was working on and troubled by, and all the good things that I understood and the great people that I met. So it was really fortunate that Risa Zwirling came into my life. But it was also a bit of a problem, because one of the leading trustees that I came to know, one of the leading trustees had a sister-in-law who was single. And the wife of this leading trustee thought she would do a little matchmaking. But by the time school started, in the fall of 1995, Risa was included by me in various events, including trustee-related events. It all worked out very well, even though I was treated a little less enthusiastically by that wife. We've become great friends, and we laugh about it now. Anyway, I came to Washington University after a pretty long career at MIT. I believe that I have lived the American dream. I know that many people are now skeptical that this is a failed concept, but my parents did not go to college. Both graduated from high school. My father was in the U.S. Navy. He was an enlisted man throughout my upbringing. He joined the Navy right out of high school in World War II. He trained to become an aircraft mechanic, and he served in the Pacific on an aircraft carrier. And at the conclusion of the war, he met my mother up in Boston, and he was assigned to be at the Charleston Navy Yard. And they developed a strong relationship, and they married up in the greater Boston area. And my father remained in the Navy, and they were assigned to go to Jacksonville, Florida, and I was conceived and born there. And we then moved to Virginia Beach. We moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where there was a naval air station. And my father competed very well for promotions, and he had the opportunity, by applying, to learn how to be a flight engineer. Flight engineer on 4-engine airplanes, radar equipped, that would fly out over the Atlantic Ocean looking for the missiles that fortunately never came. So we moved from Memphis, Tennessee to Lexington Park, Maryland, where he received training to be the flight engineer, and the squadron was based in Newfoundland. So we moved from Maryland to Newfoundland, and we then served there for about 3 years. By that time, I was only 14, and we moved to Pensacola, Florida, which is where my father was born. And I went to high school, and I got a paper route. During that paper route time, I was flush with money and no responsibilities, and I had a good high school experience at a large public high school. I think there were 3,000 students in the high school, and my brother and I both went to that same school, and he was a little older, and we both decided that we should pursue college. My brother was really quite strong in science. I was okay, and I decided I would go to Florida State University, and my brother preceded me by a year, and we both majored in science. He in physics, I in chemistry, and I had a great experience by working in undergraduate research. I had no concept of what it would mean to go to graduate school and pursue a PhD. But I needed money, to come up to my living standards established by being a paper boy. And so I asked my advisor, who in the second year was a chemistry professor. I said I'd be happy to do a job in your lab. I would clean the dishes, and I need the money. And he said, well, I'll take you on, but I'm going to give you a research project collaboratively with a graduate student. And that changed my life, because I then understood what earning a PhD would be all about. And my thought was I would go to graduate school, and I would become a research chemist working for an important company like the DuPont company. And so I applied to graduate school, and ultimately, after some begging on my part, I was accepted at the California Institute of Technology. A premier place, but very small in terms of student enrollment. And my brother, who majored in physics, also aspired to earn a PhD, and he went to Stanford University. So here are these two young people graduating from a large public high school in Pensacola, Florida. The sons of people who didn't go to college were in graduate school at Caltech and Stanford. Tremendous experiences for both of us. And my brother was really the smarter of the two, more intellectually engaged. He would read War and Peace in the summertime. I would get on my motorbike and drive around. And he was really outstanding. So the irony is that when we both earned our PhDs, my research mentor came up to me one day and said, there's a job open at Harvard. You should apply for it. And I did. And I never looked at the DuPont company or any other chemical company. The irony is that my brother, who was in condensed matter physics, went to work for the DuPont company. And he's now retired happily in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, close to the electronic materials part of the DuPont company. Anyway, I did earn the opportunity to go to Harvard, but I had the opportunity to go to MIT. I learned a lot about these institutions. There were a few other opportunities also, but I decided that if I could earn tenure, I would be very happy in Boston, Massachusetts. And I took the MIT position in part because I learned that no junior faculty member in chemistry had ever been promoted to a tenured position. So I thought MIT might be more generous. Anyway, I took the MIT position. I had great graduate students working with me. I was tolerably good as a faculty member in terms of teaching and service, and I did earn tenure, and that was a milestone in my career. And one day, after being there 15 years, the Dean of Science came to see me and said, the department chair in chemistry is going to be leaving to go to Harvard. And he said, we're looking for a new department chair. Bottom line, he offered me the opportunity. And I asked, how long would I have to do this? At the time, I was 37 years old. And he said, well, typical appointment would be 5 years. And I said to myself, 5 years, I can probably do it and still resume my teaching and research, which was going extraordinarily well. At the same time, I said to myself, if I ever want to do anything else, I need the experience of being a department chair. So I decided to accept the opportunity, and 3 years later, I was offered the position of provost of MIT. Provost of MIT is the chief academic officer responsible for everything that you think the president is responsible for. That's a quote from the president with whom I worked. And he was a great mentor. And if you're provost and you're young enough and you haven't made too many enemies by making hard decisions, you have the opportunity to interact and interview with other institutions. And I had the opportunity to interview for the chancellorship at Washington University just a few years after I started, and I did serve 5 years as provost and had the opportunity to come here. And it was a terrific opportunity. Following Bill Danforth was, admittedly, intimidating. I didn't know anyone in St. Louis other than the 24 people on the search committee. I had met Bill Danforth at a Washington, D.C. event and study section, but I didn't know the faculty, I didn't have friends, I didn't have family here. I visited St. Louis in one way or the other in connection with a chemistry career. I visited Monsanto and Mallinckrodt in those days. It was a chemical company. But I took the position here not knowing very many people. And the chair of the search committee happened to be also the chair of the board of the university. And he counseled with me about the importance of relating to St. Louisans, and at a point where it was clear, at least to him, that they would seriously consider offering me the job, he asked me, what would you think about having Bill Danforth become the chair of the board if you were to be chancellor? And today that would be very difficult because it's not good governance. But I said, I like it. I would welcome that. Because as I said, I didn't know anyone in St. Louis, and Bill Danforth knew everyone. And I could sense that he would be a very good mentor. It's one of the best decisions I made in connection with coming to the university. And until I wrapped up as chancellor, I continued to meet one-on-one with Bill Danforth at least every month. During his tenure as chair of the board, I was bothering him very frequently, and he was a tremendous person. And sadly, he passed away in the pandemic, but at age, I think, 96. So he had a long life, and obviously had a tremendous impact on the university. But going back in time to the time of the mid-19th century, in 1853, a state legislator by the name of Wayman Crowe decided that there should be a stronger university here in the St. Louis region. By the way, St. Louis University was already established in 1837, so it's older and very distinguished, but Wayman Crowe had an idea, and he wrote the charter of the university and presented it to his Unitarian pastor, William Greenleaf Eliot. And he said, Pastor, I founded this institution in your name, Eliot Seminary. That was in 1853. Eliot was a prominent, well-known figure, but also a humble person. And he said, well, it's a great idea, but I haven't done anything, so you can't name this for me. And ultimately, it was noticed that the charter was signed by the governor of Missouri on February 22nd, 1853. That being George Washington's birthday, they decided to name the university Washington University. And it was officially named that name in 1857. Now, some of you may know that I spent a sabbatical, my first sabbatical in my entire career. I went on sabbatical on January 1, 2022. So less than 2 years ago, I became president of the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I agreed to do that because they were in a problematic situation. They knew about me, and they knew that by that time I had been out of the chancellorship for a period of time during the pandemic. I wrapped up in the summer of 2019 and in the late spring of 2021 when the pandemic seemed to be easing and abating. they approached me about becoming president, and just for a short time. So I considered it. I told Risa that I had been called about taking on the presidency of another university. She said, "No way. We've done that for 24 years. It's enough." And she was very enthusiastic about being First Lady and was a terrific partner in everything that I did. But she said, "No way, we've already done all of that." But I told her that the university is George Washington University in Washington, D.C. You don't know that we have a daughter and 2 granddaughters and a son-in-law in Washington, D.C. After I told her Washington, D.C., she said, she said, "Let's do an experiment." And we took the opportunity. And the very interesting part of history relates to the George Washington University. And that is that William Greenleaf Eliot was an early graduate of what was called Columbian College. Columbian College was the precursor to the George Washington University. Founded by an act of Congress, they do their graduation on the National Mall, the only institution having that privilege. Columbian College became Columbian University, but it wasn't until 1904 that they adopted the name the George Washington University. So our university has the name about 50 years before the George Washington University. And I think that's very interesting because I spent a lot of time trying to explain to people that we were not in Washington, D.C., we're in St. Louis, and especially so as I traveled internationally. Everyone related us to either Washington, D.C. or to Seattle, where there is the University of Washington. One of my great achievements, I believe, is that now when we say Washington University, they're thinking a premier university in the Midwest in St. Louis. The key to being where we are physically is due to a man by the name of Robert Brookings. Robert Brookings was a business leader here in St. Louis in the late 1800s. In 1895, he held the title President of the Corporation of Washington University. Today, it would be equivalent to Chair of the Board. And Robert Brookings led the trustees to acquire the property that we now call the Danforth campus at Skinker Boulevard on the east and Big Bend on the west. Robert Brookings persuaded the other trustees to be interested in moving the university from downtown at 16th and Washington Boulevard now to the Clayton area. At that time, it was very rural, and it took some persuading. This was in 1895. The World's Fair, the time that George Washington University adopted our name, the World's Fair was coming to St. Louis, and Brookings and other civic leaders played a big role in attracting the World's Fair and the Olympics held at that same year. And Brookings and others committed themselves to developing physically the university, what we now call the Danforth campus. Robert Brookings himself was very successful. He gave us what is called the South 40. Many people don't know what that means. South 40 is the residential area. We now house all of the first-year student and all of the second-year students in residence halls on the South 40. Robert Brookings built a home there. It's called the Alumni House. And that was once the home for Arthur Holly Compton, a chancellor. But Brookings was very generous. He gave all of that land to the university. And South 40 refers to 40 acres south of Forsyth. So the South 40 is now very, very important. Robert Brookings continued as chair of the board, or president of the corporation, as he was called at that time, until Woodrow Wilson called him to Washington, D.C. and asked him to help prepare for World War I. And Robert Brookings, at that time, was kind of reluctant to leave St. Louis, where he had made a big contribution, served for years as president of the corporation. And he had the idea that in Washington, D.C., the graduate school of government and economy should be established in Washington, D.C. That would be the graduate programs in the social sciences for Washington University. And somewhat unfortunately, I don't know whether there are any lawyers here. I suspect a few. Law faculty members were kind of upset and leading concerned faculty members to conclude that it was a bad idea for Robert Brookings to give his wealth to Washington, D.C. They wanted to have Robert Brookings continue to give support to Washington University right here in St. Louis. In that time, Robert Brookings persisted, and it became the Graduate School of Government and Economy for Washington University in Washington, D.C. But ultimately, the law faculty persuaded the then administration of the university that the charter that Wayman Crowe wrote did not permit anything outside St. Louis or the state of Missouri. So the university severed its relationship with this new part of Washington University. That became the Brookings Institution, the #1 think tank in the world. And it would be a great asset now. And if you receive any emails from the Brookings Institution, you'll see one vestige of their interaction with this educational institution. And that was that they have an email address that says brookings.edu, indicating that they were an educational institution. They once offered PhD programs, and some PhDs were awarded by Brookings. But Brookings did other things that were very important, aside from establishing the Brookings Institution. Dr. Owens, you probably know this history, but at the time of Brookings' leadership as president of the corporation. I think it was in 1910. All medical schools, medical colleges, were receiving the equivalent of a visiting committee or an evaluation by external people. And it is the effort of Abraham Flexner that was done to evaluate medical colleges in 1910. This group of experts on medical colleges came to St. Louis, and they spent a lot of time at our medical school, and they reported to Robert Brookings and said that we've talked with and visited with many medical colleges in America. We can find hardly any worse than your medical school. And Brookings basically asked for a retest, and they granted an additional review, and they came back with the same evaluation. And Brookings was convinced by that second evaluation and terminated all of the faculty at the School of Medicine. And he set in motion the development of what is now one of the greatest medical schools in the world. And Brookings can be credited with taking serious action in that regard. Turning to the current time, let me focus on what I decided would be extremely important for the university. Every university, in fact, should focus on students, faculty, programs, and facilities. And the great thing about America is that we have autonomy as a university. And it extends to public universities like the University of Missouri or Florida State University, but especially private universities are autonomous. We are only governed by the Board of Trustees. So we can develop a program that is unique. My phrase is that we would strive to be both distinguished and distinguishable. We would not strive to be the Xerox copy of any other institution. And that conclusion that I made caused me to bristle when people told me, well, you're so fortunate, you're at the Harvard of the Midwest. We didn't aspire to be a Xerox copy of Harvard. Harvard has impressive programs and great stature, arguably the greatest university in America. But I think we should continue to strive to set our own goals, develop unique and distinguishable programs that are significant. And I believe that starting with Bill Danforth and continuing with me, we have done much of that. But as effective as Bill Danforth was, and as much success was realized during my chancellorship, it's not just the chancellor. You depend on distinguished faculty who will take responsibility, make important contributions. We have academic deans, and we have people who are regarded as more purely administrative, and all matter. And we had a great team at Washington University. Bill Danforth gave me a great gift, a group of deans who were outstanding and all committed to work with me as a new chancellor, and we had a really great start. Over time, of course, people transition, are recruited away, retire, things like that, but we started with a great group of leaders. And what I say is that leadership plus resources with planning can take you really far. And Bill Danforth taught me the importance of strategic planning. And we began one, actually, before I arrived. And I finished the strategic plan during my very first year. And we focused on enhancing the quality of the student body. And in that area, Bill Danforth had recruited a man by the name of John Berg to be the admissions czar. I was credited with building the quality of the undergraduate student body, enhancing diversity, building our visibility among talented high school students. But my main contribution was allowing John Berg to lead the effort. He did a terrific job, and just to illustrate one of the indicators, we had about 9,000 applicants for the undergraduate class in 1995. The class that came in with me was drawn from an applicant pool of 9,000. We had about 1,300 students coming in. John Berg built the admissions program and soon built the applicant pool to over 30,000. And when you look at the academic indicators of the students who were applying, that 9,000 that we had for the fall of '95, that group was not applying. We attracted a group of undergraduates that were applying to Stanford, MIT, Harvard, all of the premier universities. And that put us on the map in a big way. And it was, I knew that I was realizing a bit of success, Dr. Owens, when I heard that the Friends of Medical School faculty members couldn't get their sons and daughters into Washington University. So we were making some progress. Keep in mind, when I joined in 1995, the School of Medicine was already a premier institution, world-renowned, and a great institution across the park, and very, very important to St. Louis. I didn't know very much about academic medicine, but I was learning quickly with department heads and also from Dean William Peck, who recently passed away. But Bill Peck was also a patient person and tutored me. And one of the things that Bill Peck did was very, very important for all of St. Louis and greater parts of the country. He shared with me that programmatically, we had people doing cancer care, and we had people doing cancer research, but we did not have a focused effort like many other places. He pointed to great medical centers elsewhere that had great cancer centers. And he said we should strive to build a cancer center at Washington University in collaboration with BJC Healthcare, with whom we are partnered today and then. And I got behind this as an inorganic chemist. I realized that cancer affects virtually everyone. If you become old enough, you become aware of the adversity of cancer. And I was surprised with the recognition that we didn't have a strong cancer center, because I already knew, coming from Boston, around great School of Medicine of Harvard, that great places would have cancer research and cancer centers. So I was surprised. But Bill Peck took the initiative, and he wrote a planning grant to the National Institutes of Health National Cancer Institute. And he won that award, and we tapped Tim Eberlein to be the leader of the soon-to-be Cancer Center. And Tim Eberlein was recruited from Boston to become the head of surgery here. He was a breast cancer expert, and it seemed like he would be a good person to take the lead in terms of developing our cancer center. And I think it was probably 5 or 6 years later that the National Cancer Institute designated us as a comprehensive cancer center. And I owe, and our community owes, a lot to the leaders in the medical school who brought this to St. Louis, to Washington University and BJC Healthcare. Today, what is called the Alvin J. Siteman Cancer Center is the 3rd largest cancer center in the United States, 3rd by the number of new patients. So it is a tremendous asset, and having that outstanding comprehensive cancer center status is valuable in a lot of ways, and it's a great contribution to the community that we have the Cancer Center. I point to it as one of the great achievements during my chancellorship. And another person that should be mentioned in connection with the development of the Cancer Center is the former Chief Executive Officer of Emerson, Charles Knight. Chuck Knight was a strong advocate for the Cancer Center. And he was, I don't know whether any among you knew Chuck Knight, but he was very direct, sometimes overly direct. But he sat me down and said, what do we need to develop an NCI comprehensive cancer center? And I laid out what I knew, and had been talking with Tim Eberlein and Bill Peck, and he said, what can I do to help? And I said, well, this is going to take millions of dollars to get where we need to be. And Chuck Knight took the initiative in the corporate community of St. Louis to help build the resources, because he understood that a company would like to be able to tell their current and prospective employees that we have great medical care. And he knew that cancer is a big threat to many, many people. So that was a major undertaking in terms of the development of an important program. I'm credited with building a lot of facilities. 50 buildings were developed during my chancellorship, but I'm proud of that. We have great facilities, and if you've been to the campus, to the Danforth campus recently, you would see the East Campus, east of Brookings Hall. Beautiful. It's redeveloped in grand fashion, and it's working very, very well. I could not have done that at the beginning of my chancellorship because it required persuading the board to invest big time in dollars. And we had been doing lots of projects during my chancellorship, always some major construction project underway. But I asked the board to approve the development of an underground parking garage for 800 or 900 places. I asked the board to commit to building 5 buildings, and expanding the Kemper Art Museum. And I said, let's do it all at once at this huge cost. And with some discussions, I received their support. The board only allows us to go forward on a major capital project if we have identified the money. So I persuaded them that we had identified all of the money. Further, I said, after a commencement, we have, at that time, commencement on a Friday. I said, on the Monday after a commencement, we'll start the garage, which is right east of Brookings Hall, underground. And I said, 2 years later, we would have commencement with no construction east of Brookings Hall. And Hank Weber worked with a board committee on this capital project. Hank Weber was more purely an administrative leader, and he did the project on time, on budget, even though it was large, and we were able to complete the project in 2 years, as I had said that we would. And it turned out to be a terrific project in every way, and the financial risk was there because we depended on continuing philanthropic support. When we had the money, we would put it in the endowment. We put the entire money for the project in the endowment. Then we borrowed the money in the public market. So we were depending on endowment returns to be sustained through the life of the project, actually, and beyond. It's a bit of financial engineering that we had been using for quite some time. Get the money, put it in the endowment, let it grow, and build the building with borrowed money. In this case, it was so much money that I was worried that the endowment would collapse like it did in 2008, 2009, the Great Recession. But the good news is that the endowment took off, and one of the great achievements of working with the Board of Trustees responsible for managing the endowment. The board assisted in recruiting a man by the name of Scott Wilson, who's the manager of the Washington University Investment Management Company. That means they manage the endowment. This person had a total return of 65%, 65% in 1 year, which ended in June 30, 2021. And that endowment return was obviously tremendous. It was a record for any university in America. And so when I look at the project that we did, I'm so fortunate that we had great leaders to do the project and get it done on time, on budget, and the investment return left us with all the buildings, the underground parking garage, the re-landscaping, and a lot more money than we began with. So it's a triple success, all due to talented leaders. Let me close with just a couple of other comments about the program. I spent a lot of time on airplanes during my tenure. I arrived in St. Louis in July of 1995. On my desk was the letter from my future wife and a report, a committee report from faculty and trustees. And the report recommended that we become engaged internationally, especially in Asia. Population, economic growth, a kind of reverence for American higher education. So I decided to pursue the recommendation from that committee report. And ultimately, we developed what is called the McDonnell International Scholars Academy. We've developed about $100 million of endowment for this program. It attracts very talented scholars from all around the world, and it supports partnerships with premier universities on every populated continent. And so it's a source of pride that we've built the visibility of Washington University, not only domestically, but internationally. And John McDonnell is the person for whom this program is named for, and he went on many trips with the leadership team to Asia to help us understand the governments, the businesses, the alumni activities, and universities in Asia. And I'm very proud of that program, and we've had great success in engaging very talented people. Just close with one other fact. Even though you can see these tremendous buildings, I'm very proud of them. I'm officed now in Hillman Hall, which was the first platinum LEED certified building at the university. And we've been very sensitive to energy consumption at the university. Building these 50 buildings, we are using about the same amount of energy today as we were in 1995. And that's a testament to the sensitivity to efficiency. But the main closing point that I want to make is that we've used our resources to support students and faculty. That great investment return of 65% goes to support faculty and students and facilities programs. And importantly, we have been able to say we are need blind in terms of undergraduate admissions. During my tenure as chancellor, we created 350 new endowed professorships, and with that big total return, it makes those professorships so much more valuable in supporting our faculty. So this has been a great experience for me. I've had the opportunity to work with extremely talented people, and they have been extremely creative and dedicated to building what I think is now one of the strongest universities in America. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions. Dr. Oates.
Mark, first of all, you deserve all the accolades we can give you. For the fantastic run. My question, though, goes back to your statement about the Brookings Institute. Isn't there something newer now where there's a reconnection with Washington University and the Brookings Institute?
Brookings Institution emerged as an interesting place for us to begin a new collaboration. And Strobe Talbot became president of the Brookings Institution during my chancellorship. He was the former Deputy Secretary of State, and he was very receptive to discussing with us opportunities to engage in new collaborations, and we did so in connection with the Olin School of Business. We're collaboratively offering a master's degree in leadership, and there is a very rich student potential in Washington, D.C. So we have that collaborative program. We're also doing collaborations in connection with some of our academic programs in economics and in social work.
Were there any other questions? We have time for one or two more.
Bear with the microphone. We don't know what's going on with that.
Hi, I would like to know how the Genome Center is involved. Is Washington University involved with the Genome Center?
Washington University is a leader in genomic sciences. Bob Waterston was the head of the Department of Genetics when I arrived here, and he led the Human Genome Project for Washington University. We contributed a very significant amount of information to sequencing the human genome. And this was 50 years after the discovery of DNA, the structure of DNA. And Bob Waterston deserves a lot of credit for sequencing the human genome, and it was a project that required a lot of collaboration. The technology for genome sequencing was developed over some years, and today you can do a complete human genome of an individual in a very short period of time, like a day. And sequencing the human genome was started as a national project, and now the technology is so good, it's inexpensive in relative terms to sequence anyone's human genome. And it's been the case that Washington University has been at the forefront, both in doing the sequencing and developing some of the technology. Now there are very large and strong companies that are developing the technology even further.
Time for, is there one last question?
How have the emissions policies changed, if they have, since you arrived on the scene?
I'll repeat the question. How have admissions policies changed? We had 3 goals throughout my chancellorship: quality, diversity, and affordability. Affordable to the student and their family, and affordable to the university. It's expensive to do what we do at the level of quality that we do. And I teach a class called Financing Higher Education. Not from the student perspective, but from the university perspective. How do we run, a restaurant business, hotel business, and, oh, by the way, we're offering an education also. We also run a health center for all of the community, the Washington University community. So our policies have been guided by those objectives: quality, diversity, and affordability. Thanks to generous philanthropic support and great gains in the endowment in recent years, we've moved to provide much more scholarship support. So I wouldn't say our policies have changed. Doubtless you're aware that affirmative action is no longer appropriate, but it's important for us to be proactive in encouraging applications from talented people everywhere. It's still the case, as much visibility as we have enjoyed in recent years, it's still the case that there are a lot of high schools in America where they've never had a student attend Washington University. So the applicant pool is still larger than we have been able to tap, and I believe that the prospect of sustaining a very strong student body, a very diverse student body, including international students, the prospects are good. We now have a new leader succeeding John Berg some years ago. Renee Turner is now the admissions leader. And I'm teaching myself first year seminar, undergraduates only, a small class, and the terrific students are really inspiring. I think we're continuing to do very well, and we'll do everything within the law to sustain this effort of focusing on quality, diversity, and affordability. And it's still the case that our expenses are rising. Our endowment is growing, but we see more opportunities. I would see great opportunities lying ahead. The new chancellor, Andrew Martin, who started at a similar age to me and to Bill Danforth, we were both named as chancellor at 45. I think Andrew Martin was 46. And He has an ambitious agenda looking ahead. One of the exciting developments is the declaration that we're going to have a full-fledged School of Public Health. And the pandemic illustrates just how strong a program like that could be and how important it could be. And I think we have a good prospect for doing well in that arena. Is anyone here a graduate of St. Louis University? But there are doubtless friends of St. Louis University here. Some years ago, St. Louis University School of Public Health got into some tussle with the then president, Larry Biondi. And the faculty of the School of Public Health at St. Louis University became very unsettled. And they were showing signs of yielding to the temptation to move to UC San Francisco or University of North Carolina or other universities outside St. Louis. I asked Eddie Lawler, the then dean of the Brown School of Social Work, to consider recruiting those faculty to Washington University. And at one time, all at once, we recruited, I think, 10 faculty members from the School of Public Health at St. Louis University. We started a Master's of Public Health degree program, ultimately a PhD program, all offered through the School of Social Work. A second pillar, social work, and then public health. And that turned out to be very important because we established a program that is now the foundation for a new school. And the flexibility that we enjoy with the kind of creative leadership and the philanthropic support and the endowment gains make it possible for us on the admissions policy. The big change is going need blind, and at the same time, we can launch really important new programs of scale.
I think with that, I don't know if this is on or not, but please join me. I think all of us learned an amazing amount in this fabulous talk. Thank you.
Great to be with you.